We obviously did have a lot of news come out this week regarding the sort of internal workings, not only between the United States and Israel, but internal workings in Washington, including the State Department. State Department human rights staffer quits over Biden's Gaza policy. A State Department official working on human rights issues in the Middle East resigned Wednesday in protest of U.S. support for Israel's war in Gaza, the latest example of dissent among government personnel bursting into public view. Hold on. There we go. Bursting into public view. Anel Shalin, 38, stepped down after a year as a foreign affairs officer in the Bureau of Democracy, Human Rights, and Labor, with nearly half that tenure marked by the war Israel launched in response to a devastating Hamas attack on October 7th. In an interview, Shalin said her focus had been promoting human rights in the Middle East and North Africa, work that was complicated by Israel's war and a host of accompanying moral, legal, security, and diplomatic implications for the United States. Shalin said she tried to raise concerns internally with dissent cables and at staff forums, but eventually concluded that it was pointless as long as the U.S. continues to send a steady stream of weapons to Israel. I wasn't able to really do my job anymore, she said. Trying to advocate for human rights just became impossible. Shalin's departure is the most significant protest resignation over the Gaza conflict since the exit of Josh Paul, who was a senior State Department official involved in arms transfers to foreign governments. In a statement to the Washington Post, Paul commended Shalin for her decision, noting that she is leaving a bureau tasked with championing universal values, including respect for the rule of law, democratic institutions, and human rights, according to the State Department website. When the staff of that bureau feel there is no more they can do, Paul said, it speaks volumes about the Biden administration's disregard for the laws, policies, and basic humanity of American foreign policy that the bureau exists to advance. Shalin said she had planned to leave quietly, telling her bosses it was over Gaza, but decided to speak up at the request of colleagues who told her they wanted to resign, but couldn't because of financial or family considerations. See, what she's saying is there are a lot of people who want to quit, but this is their gig. This is their gig. And if you quit the State Department, it's not like quitting, McDonald's where you can get hired at Burger King across the street. You quit a gig like this, you make yourself an enemy of the people who can get you the next gig. That's how politics works. It's all about setting yourself up for the next gig. And so if you quit this one and they know why, they don't invite you back. And there goes your career. There goes your livelihood. That's why it takes a lot of courage for people to leave these organizations, whether it is a political party, whether it is a department of the government, because you basically take yourself out of the ecosystem that you were counting on to feed you and feed your family and send your kids to college, right? Like that's what it takes to leave a situation like this. So she says there were people who want to but can't, and because of that, she felt the need to speak out. So she said that despite the support she has received at the State Department, there are plenty of people who wouldn't agree with my point of view. At internal listening sessions on the war, she said, some employees stand up and say, I appreciate everything the U.S. government and State Department are doing for Israel, and I really support it. Those comments typically get pushback from others in the audience, she added. So here she is on Democracy Now! In a pretty powerful moment here. So let's take a look.
I wanted to quote further what you've said in explanation of why you're resigning. You said you're haunted by the final social media post of Aaron Bushnell, the 25-year-old U.S. Air Force serviceman who self-immolated in front of the Israeli embassy in Washington on February 25th. You quote him, many of us like to ask ourselves, what would I do if I was alive during slavery or the Jim Crow South or apartheid? What would I do if my country was committing genocide? The answer is you're doing it right now. If you can explain what that meant to you and how people have responded to you.
Sorry. I, you know, that post, I think spoke to me and many people who had to really look at what they were doing, and whether, you know, for me, I have a young daughter, and I thought about in the future, if she were to ask me, you know, what were you doing when this was happening? You were at the State Department. I want to be able to tell her that I didn't stay silent.
So, you know, I said a few shows back, everybody has a limit. Even people like this sometimes show they have a limit as to what they can take and what they can't. In an interview on MSNBC, she mentions...
Not everyone. Mark Regev has no limit.
I said even some of these type people. You know, people who ascend, you know, tend to have, you know, limits that are further out than the average person. But, you know, she said in an MSNBC interview that she felt that what Biden was doing by supporting Ukraine was really bolstering America's standing throughout the world, and how that really demonstrated a commitment to human rights. Just totally insane. The total opposite has happened. The world has rallied against us, not wholly because of that, but a large part of why BRICS has emerged as this major player on the world stage is because of the Ukraine war. So you can be totally delusional on that issue, totally wrong-headed on that issue, but still have the humanity in you to realize this is too far for you. This is what I mean when I say most ordinary people have a limit as to what they can take and what they cannot take, to the point where even a high-level State Department operative like this, who is just drowning in Kool-Aid when it comes to Russia, Ukraine, and NATO expansion and the post, you know, Cold War unipolar world that we have tried to build, she can swallow all of that. This is too much for people. This is too much for the mom in her. That's what she said there. You know, like this gets at a level of people where it transcends a lot of the other work that they do. It functions on a different level when you're up close to this kind of horror. That was enough for her to say not only does she have to step down, but she has to come out and speak out, because there are other people who would do the same thing, but they feel they can't sacrifice themselves in that way.
Yeah, and one wonders where she's going to work after this. You know, you can maybe go work in some of the few organizations that are not for profit, non-NGOs that actually challenge Washington, but most of those are co-opted too. You know, most of the organizations that theoretically are supposed to be peace, they're funded by the Pentagon. Like they put out an occasional press release. They're controlled opposition. So where do you really go? If you find a place that really is challenging Washington, you're going to know the place because they're paying you $38,000 a year.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the whole game. That's the whole game. And that's why so few people do this, according to what she said there. And I think it's absolutely true. You know, I've never known a person who's worked that high up at like a federal agency, but I've known people who have worked for Congress people who have worked for staffers, and who have done fundraising outside of, you know, formal Washington. Like, you know, they'll go from working for a congressperson to doing, you know, third-party fundraising for a super PAC or something. It's all the same swamp of shit. And if you piss one person off in there, you could bet your ass word is going to circulate, and you're going to have a very difficult time finding work that pays, like you said, you know, a wage that you are used to getting when you're inside that system. That's why I say, man, from people who leave and do their own thing, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them, like a guy like Andrew Yang, you know, you could think Andrew Yang is a joke, which, you know, he's turned into a lot with the Dean Phillips bullshit. They don't do that for the money. You don't leave the two-party system for the money. You could think someone is a clown and an asshole or whatever, but you can't call someone a grifter who is inside the two-party system and chooses to take themselves out of it. The money is in there. The money is at the State Department. The money is with the DNC. The money is not outside. So once you leave, yeah, you're taking a huge chance. You're taking a huge chance. And this is a chance that almost no one in those spaces are willing to take, because why would they? Every single incentive you could imagine goes the other way, is pulling them in. not pushing them out.
Right. And that's why when you look at these bloodless State Department spokespeople who have risen to that level, that they'd be put out in front of a microphone to deal with the press, they're the scum of the earth.
Exactly.
And that's true throughout politics.
Please clap.